My name is Allison. I saw a spine doctor for a while because of the back issues, and we were just managing that back pain. And he actually said, I think this is way before we knew, I think you either have lung cancer or breast cancer. And I was like, okay. And I literally thought going into this, I probably have breast cancer, like, right? Like, I've never smoked. There's no history of lung cancer in my family. And so getting the diagnosis of having lung cancer and then having it be this ALK mutation, it like I was in totally unknown waters. My original oncologist told me this is life limiting, and that is not what you want to hear when you're a 45-year-old mother of two. I have no family history of any lung cancer. No one in my family has smoked. There's no history of the ALK gene mutation. And now this is what's really interesting. It's not like a BRCA type of gene mutation. It's not something that is either inherited nor passed down at this point. They're doing a lot of research in this field. I actually am participating in a couple studies that are being done out of Harvard. It's called the Inherit. There's another one about young lung cancer patients that I'm participating in because they don't actually know why. Why do these certain individuals, such as myself, get lung cancer with these different mutations? But it's not something that's inherited nor passed down. But I've got this, and that's why I'm trying to be as active as possible, participating in as many studies, giving blood where I can, because it's something that is starting to affect more and more young patients, which is terrible. The day I saw my medical oncologist, the first time I ever met her, I was literally handed the targeted therapy drug. It was a pill. It was pills. And I was like beyond thrilled, to be really honest. It just took a lot of the question game out of it. And we were just like, okay, fine. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's start healing. And so I started the targeted therapy drug at full dose. But that's what gave me the full body rash because my body just couldn't tolerate it. And I had to stop it and then go back up. Eventually, I tapered up to full dose. And it happened to be at a good time because I was taking a break from the drug when I had radiation to my femur. There's controversy. It's not controversy, but some people will stop their targeted therapy drug when they have radiation, some won't. I happened to be off of it because my body was having this huge reaction to it, and it worked out because I didn't have any issues with radiation. It was actually, like, I feel really bad saying it because it was a really easy process for me. The team was amazing. It was just time consuming, and it was time away from my family. It was time in the summer. I was going down, laying in a hospital scanner, and then you have to have these molds made of your body, and then you go in but once you have the radiation, I had 5 treatments done. It was so easy. I got to know the team. I was like, put on my reggae, put the reggae on. You just go lay down, say a couple prayers, and all the magic happens. It's like you don't even feel it. You don't see it. It's just you're just laying there. It was so easy. So I was on that treatment for about a year and a half, until I had a tumor in my shoulder that started to grow and started to get a little not aggressive, but it just started to hurt. And when it starts to affect your ball game, it's like time to do something. That was what was happening. It was last summer that my arm started hurting after a treatment. Oh, actually, I'll go back. Another part of the treatment was that I had quarterly infusions of like a bone strengthening agent. And that's pretty typical for patients who have bone mets like myself. I had them quarterly. It was an infusion, so it usually I would get them done when I went in to see my oncology team because at that point once you start your treatment, you go in for, several checkups. You have scans at like 6 or 8 weeks, and then usually it's about every 3 months. You have CT scans or PET scans, MRI, and blood work done. And then I would have my Zometa, so which is like a bone strengthening infusion. And I really didn't have any issues with it, but I started getting a little symptomatic in terms of, it would cause like bone achiness, and my right shoulder was starting to hurt in, I would say, around August of last year. And so that's when we started doing some additional testing and found out that the tumor in my shoulder was growing. And looking back, they're basically just doing CTs of like my chest. They didn't always get my shoulder. And so following bone mets when I had such extensive disease, it's not, I don't follow like the typical pattern of like, check her chest. It's all clear. It's like, no, I've got meds actually, like in a lot of places people don't. So I think that we weren't really watching my shoulder very carefully. And so I had asked, this is part of like, being an advocate. I was working with my expert. He said, let's get a PET scan and see where everything is. And that's where it was 90% amazing news that pretty much everything had resolved, but about 3 or 4 spots at that time, just in my bones. But the shoulder was looking a little bit bigger, and it just shows up on a PET scan as activity, looks a little bit different color. And my team did a blood biopsy, which is basically taking your blood, and they sent it out to get, kind of this smart testing done essentially. And it actually told us that I had developed 2 new mutations already. And they were still within the ALK family, which is good news. And so we consulted with the expert and my team, and then we decided to radiate the shoulder because it was symptomatic. It was hurting. I couldn't move it like I wanted to. I couldn't, do my exercises. I was starting to work out and lift weights again. And so we radiated it, and then we had to end up switching targeted therapies to the fourth generation targeted therapy. And I was nervous. I was kind of upset. I really wanted to be on that first drug for years and years and decades and just be happy go lucky and just be on it. But that's not what my body decided. And I was always joking. I'm like, I've always been like an A student, like a type A person. I was like, I was just really hoping my cancer would just dumb it down a little bit, just not be so smart, but it already developed a resistant mutation. So we switched drugs in January. And turns out now that the drug I'm on right now is actually the gold standard for if you were to be diagnosed now, this is what you'd be started on. It's extremely potent in the brain. And I forgot to mention, so I had about 3 very small lesions in my brain when I was diagnosed. I was not symptomatic. And within the first 3 months of starting the targeted therapy drug, everything has gone away. And thank goodness I've stayed clear since a little over 2 years. So yeah, fast forward to switching drugs. I'm now on my second line targeted therapy drug. And I have had 2 sets of scans, and I have pretty much no activity in my entire body except for the shoulder that is resolving. And my primary tumor has shrunk down to about 1.5 centimeters. These drugs are so powerful and they're so amazing, and they come with some really wild side effects. So, the first one is weight gain. I've joked to all my friends. I'm like, this drug is keeping me alive, but trying to make me real fat because it just really messes with your metabolism and everything. And so the doctor said, okay, we're going to check your blood work and your lipids because, it kind of makes your cholesterol go high. And I was like, oh, I've got this. I got this. I don't drink. I was like, I don't eat red meat and I don't eat dairy. And within 2 weeks, they doubled. And my cholesterol, triglycerides have always been very normal. And that's one thing I've always, been very conscious of. And they completely doubled. And she was like, you can't eat your way out of this. And I was like, dang, apparently I can. So They put me on a statin right away, and that's controlling it. It's kind of keeping it like under control. I added back some supplements, some fish oil and that sort of stuff to help see if that can stay under control. So the statins were kind of wild to have to jump on, and those come with their own side effects of like big muscle aches. Um, and then the this drug is really potent in the brain, which is wonderful, causes a little bit of brain fog, and some people have some issues with it affecting their like actual mental state. And I've been lucky enough that it's not doing that for me. I definitely feel like my word finding is slower than it used to be. But the biggest thing for me is I have peripheral neuropathy now, my fingertips. So there's a lot of edema that you get with this drug, so swelling, and it's worse in the morning. My hands are super tight. There's certain rings I can't wear anymore because my hands are so swollen in the morning. But as soon as I get up, I move, I walk every day. I'm trying to lift weights again. I walk twice a day some days. Staying active has really helped. So the swelling, and then my fingertips are essentially, they feel numb every day, all day, every day. And it gets worse. My hands are more swollen. There are some, prescription drugs you can take, and I tried taking them and I felt terrible. The way that I kind of describe it and I talk about it with patients is, or other people, is like I'm kind of just like riding this wave of side effects, because I've noticed through my Facebook group with the ALK community, some people have said, oh, like I had that symptom, that side effect, and it went away after like 6 months or a year. So I think they kind of change, and I'm just kind of like riding that wave and managing as I go. At this point, the neuropathy isn't limiting to me. Like I feel like I get fumbly trying to do my, fasten my my necklaces and that those little things, but otherwise it's really made me focus even more so on my health and my wellness, right? Not just for how I look, but just really for the functionality of my body and like reducing swelling, moving your lymphs, like all of the detox, all of that good stuff. It's really changed my focus to my health. And honestly, like if my fingertips could be any less numb, that would be amazing, So what else can I do to make that better? There's a lot of clinical trials happening, and I think if I had the opportunity, I would definitely participate in one if it was if it worked with our life and our family, and if it was necessary, right? So right now I'm on the second line drug, and there isn't really any shelf life. There's the hope is that you can go 10 years, you can go 12 years on the same drug. It just depends on how your body is responding and how the cancer is responding. And if it's quiet and dormant and not active, you just push on and you try to stay on the same drug as long as possible. A lot of what happens is sometimes with this disease, because when you're stage 4, the disease is microscopic, right? It's still kind of like microscopically floating around, even though my medicine's keeping it quiet. You might have like little tumors develop that are small and not really bothersome, but what happens is we call it weeding the garden, essentially, in our field, in our area. If you have a couple tumors and you're like, okay, let's just zap it. So you'll radiate a spot that might pop up in your liver, in your lung, in your shoulder, even, and people have different radiation types in their brain. And then the idea is that you just hold the line and you try to stay on your targeted therapy as long as possible, because there are only probably about 5 drugs for ALK positive. There's one in clinical trials right now. It's getting really close and it's looking amazing. So I know that is coming. And then there's different clinical trials looking at different types of mutations that pop up like after your body stops responding essentially to the drug that you're on. So my hope is I can be on this as long as possible. And the last thing that I'm doing also is that I'm actually talking to a thoracic surgeon about removal of my primary tumor. So it's called local consolidated therapy. And there has been a few studies done on it in patients with EGFR, which is kind of like a sister or brother lung cancer mutation to ALK, but there's just more of them. And there's been a study where it looks at patients who are stage 4, like myself, go on targeted therapy, and then they have a localized consolidated therapy, either surgical removal or radiation to the primary tumor. And it's looking like it's showing patients are getting longer. What we want is progression-free survival time. So that's what I'm looking at getting done. The hospital that I'm at here isn't, there aren't any doctors that are really, that have the appetite for it, if you will. But you have to find a doctor who is understanding of like the stage you have, what we're working with, and then, looking at what the tumor that I have left. And it's small, relatively small, and it's inactive, but my goal is to try to get it, mediated, whether it's surgery or radiation, to improve my progression-free survival. So that is something that's not like standard of care when you're stage 4. Not knowing how long will this treatment last? How long will the next treatment last? How, like, my original oncologist told me this is life limiting. And that is not what you want to hear when you're a 45-year-old mother of two. And I don't really believe that oncologist, to be really honest. As soon as she said that, in my mind, I just had a mental switch, and I was like, no, actually, no. What you're saying, I'm not receiving that information. It probably, I know it's, strange to say, but I do have a lot of hope that they're gonna work on, this mutation and this type of illness and make it more of like a chronic illness. So I would say that, yeah, obviously the biggest thing is the unknown. How long will this treatment last? What will I have to have done? Like, what will my quality of life be in 1 year? In 5 years? Will I be there for my kids' graduations and, to see them grow up? Like, that's the biggest fear and the worst part of the diagnosis is the unknown. And I think it's kind of brought me full circle to remember that, like, everyone is human, and everyone, to be really honest, like, we don't always know. Like, we could walk out the front door and someone could get hit by a car. Like, we don't, like, I could be hit by a car, right? Like, we don't, I could die from something completely other than lung cancer. I definitely feel like I'm tied to this kind of every 3-month routine, whack-a-mole, scan routine with my oncologist, right? So, like, at the ALK summit that I was just at, it was like I'm living life like in 90-day increments, because every 90 days, depending on what the scan says, it could change the course of what's happening, of my plans, of my treatment. So I'm kind of living life in these 90-day increments, which kind of, I am, but yet I'm not, right? Like, I'm still planning on, like, yes, we're going to take this trip when I turn 50. Yes, we are going to do this for my kids in the fall. Like, I'm still planning life, but the reality is that, like, every 90 days, depending on what my scans say, like, it might be like, I have to change treatment again, or, oh, you have to have radiation to this part of your body now. So that kind of sucks. And just all of the medical involvement. I used to work in the medical field. I have so much respect for all of the doctors and nurses and everyone in that field. But I'm like, heck, I don't want to be there every 3 months and just, hey, guys, what's up? Like, I know all the medical, the MAs were like, peace up. Like, we're like good friends. And so we're just trying to make this like as easy as possible. But like, the medical involvement is just, it's just never ending, I think. And that kind of just feels tiresome at some point. Just like, oh, okay, yep, yeah. So right after my birthday, I'll go in for my scans and just cross my fingers. But every time you have scans, there's all this anxiety. So it's just kind of the rigmarole of, I guess, survivorship and life with cancer, is that you're never fully, really far removed from it. My hope is kind of like my lifeline. My message of hope is that there are very smart people who are committed to the field of trying to, whether it's solve my type of cancer, figure out why people are getting this type of lung cancer. There are very smart people working towards, towards a better life for all of us. And I think you just have to keep, you know, like the way that I think about it, and I tell people and my kids, is like, you kind of have to keep your face to the sun, okay? Like, there's always going to be the darkness. And if you just are constantly like, oh my gosh, like, but what if I have a new tumor? And what if this medication, if you're constantly being pulled into that darkness, like it's going to happen, right? Like the bad things are going to happen. But if you kind of just keep your face to the sun, keep facing the light, focus on the positivity, like, I do believe that that kind of stuff will follow and it will happen. Maybe not in the timeline, but just to keep that hope that there are really smart people working towards a greater good. And it might not always feel like it, but if you don't believe it, then I don't think it's going to happen. Anyone with lungs can get lung cancer, but that there is hope. Even with the worst diagnosis you would ever expect to have or hear, you can still find good things from the diagnosis. You can still cultivate, positivity, and you can still live life to the fullest and chase joy. And I think with terrible diagnoses and, things that happened, like those terrible kind of moments, a lot of good can come from it. And so I'm not saying I'm happy I have this cancer, but it has really helped me shape and focus my intentions, my energy, chasing joy with my friends and my family and my kids is like top priority. Instead of being the one that's like, your friends are like, let's go swimming, let's jump in the water. I'm like, sure, let's go, let's do it. Like, who cares? Like, I think it has really helped me shape my, just my every intention moving forward, taking little jobs here and there makes me feel like I'm actually able to contribute again and do work that's meaningful to me, but it's with organizations that are important to me and that speak to me.